All right, hi everyone, and welcome to the Nature Journal Club's Writing Workshop Wednesday. This is our second meeting ever, and today we will be learning about Rachel Carson and the sense of wonder. My name is Rebecca, and with an E, Rolnick, and a bunch of people have introduced yourself in the chat, so thank you. I'm really happy to have you here. I'm from upstate New York, with a lot of hills and forests. So today, we just need some paper and something to write with, or you could also use a voice recorder if you prefer, or if that's easy for you. So just a couple of thoughts from last class. We ended up having a little discussion. So last time we talked about using I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, and about the differences between writing to observe something and then writing to think and writing to feel and to express yourself. And we ended up talking a little bit at the end about how sometimes it's good to do a nature journal entry in a way that's very visually pleasing and is more thought out in the layout and things like that. But sometimes it also can be good to just let yourself write and be messy, because the point is just to get your thoughts out. So it's kind of two different ways that you could do things. And both ways are good. It just depends on what you want in that moment. And so something I mentioned last time is how when we think about writing, we often think about writing to communicate, like writing in an essay for school or writing something for other people. But we want to start out by writing just for ourselves as a tool to help us to think and to process and to help us learn. And it doesn't really matter right away if it looks nice or if it is useful to other people yet. But I was thinking about that again afterwards, and I was thinking about how writing in more of a visual kind of way is sort of like writing to communicate, even if it's for yourself. So it could help you understand something better, like when you go back and look at your notes later. So that's just something that I was thinking about. Another thing from last time is I talked about how we can use our nature journal like a scientist to learn more about the world, and how writing, as opposed to, so drawing is a great way to learn, but writing can help us go more in depth with our thoughts and ideas and explaining the things that we notice around us. So some of the scientists and naturalists, explorers I talked about last time were Lewis and Clark, Aldo Leopold, and Charles Darwin. And they were all great scientists and naturalists. But of course, something that I started thinking about after I picked all these people is, why are all of my go-to scientists mostly white men? And we have some more diversity in the scientists and nature writers that we learn about. Because, and this is something that I want to talk about more in these workshops into the future, because when we go out into nature, we bring our whole selves with us, and that affects everything about the experience that we have there, and even the types of ideas that we think about and what we notice, and even how would we define what nature is in the first place. So that's something that I want to be thinking about more in the future in these workshops. So more on that later on. But today we're talking about Rachel Carson and the sense of wonder. So most people know Rachel Carson as the author of Silent Spring. So a little background on her: she worked for the US Fish and Wildlife Service, but she was interested in nature for her whole life, and she was never really sure if she wanted to be a scientist or a writer. And she was first published when she was 10 years old, But she ended up being able to be both. And she wrote a couple books called Under the Sea Wind, The Sea Around Us, and The Edge of the Sea, which have been described as love stories to the ocean. And she had a lot of things that she was interested in, but she started to become really concerned about the pesticide DDT and the impacts that that was having on the natural world. And so she, as you might be familiar with, she wrote the book Silent Spring to help bring awareness to this issue. And ultimately ended up helping to get DDT banned to be sold in the United States. So this is her most famous book, which really had a huge impact on the modern environmental movement. But you might be a little less familiar with the last book she wrote, which I think it was actually originally an article and was published after her death. But this was actually one of the books that she thought was the most important, because it's about exploring the natural world and how that affects children's well-being. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, and how we can find a sense of wonder in nature. So just to start off, a quick question today. If we're being a naturalist, what is a naturalist? And what are the qualities that make a good naturalist? So this is kind of a warm-up question. You can write in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and say something. Curiosity, yeah. I'll just give you 1 minute for this. Observer, someone who studies nature, yeah. Love for the natural world, love of nature. Yeah, so there are a lot of things. There are no right answers, but some of the qualities include being observant, being patient, curious, which one of you said, respectful of the natural world, full of wonder, inquisitive, which is a lot like curious, being in the moment, and also sharing what we discover with each other. So if you'd like, and we'll come back to this together in a little bit, we can start making a list of words that are sort of synonyms with the word wonder. So I'll give you just like 30 seconds again and see if you can think of any, and then you can add to this list as we go on. Enthralled, yeah, that's a good one. So the word, yeah, a couple of you said the word awe as a synonym. Yeah, so one of the things I really like about the word wonder is it kind of has two different meanings. It could mean wonder as in awe and something amazing or beautiful, but it can also mean wonder and asking a question, like when we do I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of. So could anyone give us some examples of wonder, something amazing, or wonder as in a question? And these could be anything. Like, I wonder what's for dinner. I wonder where that squirrel is going. Karen says, I'm amazed at the beauty of the mountains. Yeah, I think you guys get the idea. So here's a question now. Why do we need wonder and wonder? Both of these kinds. Wonder as I'm asking questions, but also wonder as in something, feeling amazed, feeling that sense of awe. Because these are two different things, but they each give us something a little bit different. And they also connect with each other. So does anyone have any thoughts about this? Again, you can share in the chat or you can unmute yourself. In the chat, Amy says the initial feeling of awe usually leads to wondering. Yeah, Alexandra?
Unmute. I feel as though they're a loop where the sense.
Can anybody else hear Alexandra? You unmuted yourself, but you might need to change the microphone or the speaker. That's what was happening to me earlier.
I don't know how to do that. Are you able to hear me?
Amy can hear her. I wonder. Oh, I think this is a me problem actually. Let me just do something and then can you try again, Alexandra?
Sure. I was saying that I
Hang on
feel.
just 1 second. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, can you try it one more time?
It feels as though.
Wait, I am very sorry. Let me just put in these headphones and see if that's better. Okay, can you try now?
I was saying it feels as though the two words interact as a loop. We see something that fills us with the thrill and amazing sense of wonder, and that triggers questions within us. And then we wonder even more about it because the grip of that sense of wonder makes us want to know more. So we begin to wonder and asking questions. And as we ask the questions and discover more, that triggers even more of those feelings of amazement and wonder. And it's a loop that just keeps on spiraling and feeding itself.
Yeah, I really like how you described that it's a loop. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to add on to that? How is it now? Can you hear me now? Okay, so how can I hear everybody, but also have you hear me? Is it better if I just lean into it a little bit? All right, I guess that's what we'll do then, so that we can keep moving along here. Okay, so the sense of wonder and wondering questions. So Okay, Alexandra, I'm glad you can hear me better with the earbuds too. Okay, yeah, so I think everything that Alexandra had said pretty much um, hit it on the head. I was thinking about this when I was teaching some kids doing how to do, I wonder, it reminds me of, and I noticed that sometimes when they come in right away, they just have all these questions and they're excited. But sometimes if I just say, do you have any questions? Like, what are you wondering about? What are you curious about? Sometimes they don't really, they seem kind of confused or don't really know what to wonder about. So I was like, what's missing here? And I think it's exactly right. We need to have the sense of wonder before to kind of draw us in and feel amazed about something before we can start to wonder about it in a more curious, intellectual kind of way. And so I was thinking about this, and it reminded me of I'm reading this book called Birthright. And we'll get back to Rachel Carson in just a minute. But I'm reading this book called Birthright, which is by this person who has worked with E.O. Wilson about the concept of biophilia and humans' innate love for nature. And um, the book is organized. Every chapter shows something different that we get from nature, um, and that basically helps us to be a whole person. And the first chapter is about aesthetics, which sometimes we might think is kind of superficial, but actually, I think relates a lot to this sense of wonder and how do we connect with nature in the first place. So he said, this is a quote from the end of that chapter. It says, an aesthetic appreciation An aesthetic appreciation of nature requires this deeper and sustained level of engagement. It demands that we open ourselves to the wonder, mystery, and harmony of life in all its vastness and splendor, and the underlying abiotic systems that render this achievement possible. When this occurs, we feel privileged at the chance to bask in its reflected glory, allowing ourselves the possibility to partake in its joy and even take guidance from the beauty of the simple thorn bush beside the road, as spectacular in its own way as the colorful and symmetrical rose. Conversely, when we debase or remain indifferent, that's supposed to say indifferent, to nature's beauty, our senses become dull, our emotions flatten, our intellect withers, and our capacity to find meaning in our lives is replaced by cynicism and pessimism. So I think it's just as I was thinking about, and Alexandra was thinking, we need to have that sense of wonder and amazement, and then that can trigger us into the sense of curiosity and wanting to understand it in a deeper way. So from that, let's take a look at The Sense of Wonder by Rachel Carson, and I will just pull that up. Okay, so it's a whole book, but this is an excerpt from it that I think is particularly powerful. So can everyone see this? Great. Would anyone like to read the first paragraph out loud? If no one wants to, I can read it all, but I like to give you the chance if you want to. And for some reason now I can't see the chat, so hopefully just nobody is trying to chat, but if you are and you're trying to get my attention, you can just put up your hand. Okay, there's the chat again. Okay. So if nobody else would like to read it, I'll go ahead. And so while I read this, see if you can find any more synonyms for the word wonder, and to see what this makes you think about and if this gives you any inspiration for your own writing. And then we'll do another writing activity after this. So exploring nature is largely a matter of becoming receptive to what lies all around you. It is learning again to use your eyes, ears, nostrils, and fingertips, using your senses. For most of us, knowledge of our world comes largely through sight, yet we look about with such unseeing eyes that we are partially blind. One way to open your eyes to unnoticed beauty is to ask yourself, what if I had never seen this before? What if I knew I would never see it again? I remember a summer night when such a thought came to me strongly. It was a clear night without a moon. With a friend, I went out on a flat headland that is almost a tiny island, being all but surrounded by the waters of the bay. There, the horizons are remote and distant rims on the edge of space. We lay and looked up at the sky and then the millions of stars that blazed in the darkness. The night was so still that we could hear the buoy on the ledges out beyond the mouth of the bay. Once or twice, a word spoken by someone on the far shore was carried across on the clean air. A few lights burned in cottages. Otherwise, there was no reminder of other human life. My companion and I were alone with the stars. I have never seen them more beautiful. The misty river of the Milky Way flowing across the sky, the patterns of the constellations standing out bright and clear, a blazing plant low on the horizon. Once or twice, a meteor burned its way into the Earth's atmosphere. And then, Joella, I saw you said in the chat, if you would like to read the next part, you can.
Where it occurred?
So you could read just one or both, whatever you want.
It occurred to me that if this were a sight that could be seen only once in a century, or even once in a human generation, this little headland would be thronged with spectators. But it can be seen many scores of nights in any years, and so the lights burned in cottages, and the inhabitants probably have not a thought to the beauty overhead. And because they could see it almost any night, perhaps they will never see it. An experience like that, when one's thoughts are released to roam through the lonely spaces of the universe, can be shared. Even if you don't know the name of a single star, you can still drink in the beauty and think and wonder at the meaning of what you see.
Thank you, Joella. You have a very nice reading voice. So any initial reactions to that excerpt? Karen, are you trying to say something?
This thing down. I do have one. I've been there, but I've never put that into words. So it was very inspiring.
You've actually been to that place where
Not to that place, but I've seen those sites at other places. Yeah, because I have no idea where she was. So no, but I could just picture the whole thing in my head perfectly. It was wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's one of the things about writing that can be really great is that if we notice if we pay attention to what we notice and we're thinking, sometimes it can, and then we share those things with each other, sometimes that can, it can make us all feel like, wow, I felt that, but, someone could put it into words so well. Joel says in the chat, I thought about how the commonplace is often not appreciated. And then Amy, would you like to add something?
Yeah, it just reminded me of an experience I had out in I think it was Arizona in a desert park, and the sky was just, I experienced it in a way that I never have before, in a way that like my entire body felt like it was kind of being lifted up into the expanse of it. It was just amazing. And like Karen said, I wish that I knew how to capture some of these experiences in writing so that it could help transport other people to that similar feeling, because I think that feeling is just, it's part of what's going to help us care enough about the earth and taking care of it.
Yeah. So it's part of it's about our own, how do we make the most of our own experience and being more in the moment, like really fully appreciating it, but then also how do we all use that experience, or maybe use isn't the right word, but how does that experience all make us feel more compelled to care about nature, and how do we take care of it, be more respectful to nature.
Yeah, how we
So
convey that message to other people.
right, because this is a little bit off of my plan, but something that as a lot of people think, if only people knew more, people had more of the facts, more of the data, and that's all very important, but it often doesn't do as good a job of changing people's minds as we as scientists wish that it would. But helping people to explore that sense of wonder, that really can make a difference. So how do we explore it in ourselves and then also be able to share that with other people? So, okay, so with other words for the sense of wonder, here are some examples that I had. Joy, mystery, thrill, excitement, love, awe, surprise, beauty, and delight. And some of you put others in the chat earlier when we talked about it. Awe, enthralled. Does anyone have any other words to add on to this list before we go on? Can I read the list one more time? Is that what you're asking? Yeah, and oh, I gobsmacked. That's a good one. Okay, I meant to be sharing my screen and I was not, so here they are. Joy, mystery, thrill, excitement, love, awe, surprise, beauty, delight. And then I'll just add on a couple of these: enthralled and gobsmacked. Speculate. Yeah, that's more of speculate's more of like the I wonder sense of the word. But I'll put that on too. And then tickled. Okay, so now what we could do is on your paper, if you would like to set it up fascinate or fascinated. Yeah. So on your piece of paper, you can set it up any way you want to, but what you could do is write searching for wonder at the top, and then draw it into 4 quadrants. And in each of the quadrants, write one of these words that's a synonym for wonder, whichever ones resonate with you and that you want to explore the most. So for example, you put joy, surprise, mystery, awe, but you can pick whichever ones from this list work for you. And then if we were all able to go outside and, be together in person, we would be going on this search for wonder outside together. And I'd encourage you to try that yourself after this workshop sometime. But for right now, a couple of things that you could do, you could just do things that you think about or that you have memories of. If you're by a window, you might look out the window to try to find some things. Or if you have any nature objects around you, like for example, I have a feather here or a rock or whatever, or a house plant or your pet. Or another option is you could look back in your nature journal and look for some things that make you feel wonder or feel these emotions, but maybe that you haven't explored in this way fully. And you could write more about those. So then in each of these boxes on your page, you could do a little sketch. Of course, we're focusing on writing, but if you want to do a little sketch, you can. And then for each thing, try to find a different thing to examine for each quadrant. And then you can just write little notes, bullet points. If you want to go into writing full sentences or paragraphs, you can, but you don't have to. Again, we're not writing to communicate right now. We're just writing as a tool to think and to learn. So does this make sense to everybody? I feel like I see some confusion. Or does this make sense to everyone? Okay, well, if you have any questions, again, you can just raise your hand or write in the chat. And writing descriptions. Yeah, so you can write for the 4 words that you pick, and you can pick any of these 4 words. You can, so yeah, you can either describe the thing itself, like more of the observations, but or maybe just a little bit of that to start, but as much as you can about how you felt those emotions or how it made you feel a sense of wonder. So again, you can do bullet points or little notes. And I think of like when Rachel Carson wrote her book on her, what we just read, you know, she didn't just sit down and immediately write this perfect, beautiful page, but she started with notes and I mean, I'm assuming just thinking about it and the really strong sense of wonder. So I guess with whichever 4 words you pick, whatever you think of that kind of feels the strongest about each of those things. So I'll put a timer on for, let's do 10 minutes and see if you can put at least a little bit into each quadrant. Okay, ready, set, go. And I'll be doing this along with you too. 1 minute left. Okay, that's 10 minutes. How did that go for everyone? So, let's see, let's not rewrite this now because we're almost out of time, but after this, if you want to, just think about this quote again from the passage we read. What if I never saw this before? What if I knew I would never see it again? And just think about your experience of writing this and thinking about it. You can do that. But just for right now, would anyone like to share what you wrote about? I'll give an example first. So I wrote joy, surprise, mystery, and awe. And for joy, the first thing that came to my mind was a sunset. And part of me was like, really? A sunset? That's so kind of cliche. But the things that we feel a sense of wonder for are that they're often like there's a reason, or at least it's very common, and often there's an evolutionary reason why we feel so attracted to a certain thing. So I wrote a sunset, pink, orange, gold, sunlight like liquid dripping over the edge of the horizon, one last flash of brightness, too bright to look at, spreading color across the sky. So you can see from my example, like right now, you don't have to have full sentences. You could just have run-ons. You can just have kind of stream of consciousness. It doesn't really have to be good. It's just kind of getting your first thoughts onto paper. So like, is the sunset like liquid? Maybe, I don't know. But we don't really have to worry about that yet. It's just being able to get our thoughts down on paper. And then for awe, something interesting I noticed is that the things I thought of were either really big or really small. Alexandra?
So I did all 4 of my words about one thing, which is a moon snail shell. I chose joy, awe, enthralled, and beauty. Do I share a little bit of the writing?
Sure, you can share as much or little as you want to.
Well, the joy is I have a favorite spot at Sandy Point State Beach, and I always, it's a treasure hunt. I always hope to find at least one uninhabited moon snail shell every time I go there. The awe that I feel about that this soft little animal creates its shell home that's so sturdy it can withstand the enormous power of the ocean. The beauty, I love the perfect spirals of it and the differences in coloring when it's wet and when it's dry. And enthralled is looking so closely at them. And I'm fascinated when I find a broken piece that reveals that inner spiral structure.
I really like how you did all of them about the same thing. And I think that's what this quote, like, what if I never saw it before? What if I never would see it again? I think that's what really can inspire us to see the wonder in things that might seem really small or not important, but we can find this sense of wonder all around us. It's like if we never saw it before, realize how amazing it is.
There's a wonderful book by Anne Morrow Lindbergh called Gifts of the Sea. And she's interweaving not only her personal stories, but also some quiet retreat time that she spent, solitary time down by the sea. And she wove in stories about shells in with her interpersonal time at that. And I've loved the sea and been going to it since I was a very small child. So it very much resonated with me.
Thank you for sharing what you wrote. And thanks for sharing that book. I'll have to look it up. Sharon?
I just unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. So actually I chose, I'm not sure that this word was on the list, but I chose marvel. And
it wasn't on the list, but I really like that one.
Yeah. So the place, the observation that I made was at Fern Canyon at Prairie Creek State Park in California, which is, I think it's part of the state and federal redwood parks system. And my husband and I visited this place 12 years ago. This particular site has made such a deep impression on me that I have thought about it many times over the last 12 years. And so I wrote, walking through the shallow water of Fern Canyon, listening to the trickle of waters from the walls and feeling the flow of the water underfoot, breathing in the fragrance of the ferns along the walls and feeling humility, feeling small. Wondering, how did this deep slot canyon form with such a small rivulet of water? How powerful and perseverant is water?
Thank you for sharing that. I really like all the details you went into there and how you had all of these verbs and the ing verbs, because you weren't just describing the place itself, but your actions within it.
I don't know if any of you have been there. It's definitely worth a visit. But
And what part of the world or the country is that?
it's in California. It's part
California.
of the federal and state redwood forest parks complex, and it's a little bit north of San Francisco, along the shore. So there's beach and mountain and lots of trees, redwoods, coastal redwoods.
Sounds amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us.
I'll mute myself now.
Amy, did you just raise your hand?
Yeah. I didn't write anything very poetic. I basically just did bullet points of different
And that's
experiences that I had with the words that I chose. But the thing that I thought was interesting is that once I got through coming up with examples, basically, of when I felt joy, beauty, fascination, and surprise, that every one of them had sort of a body sensation, an intake of breath that had some form of wow. Like with joy, it was like, oh, wow. I just got to see this European robin eat 5 worms in 30 seconds. Or I'm surprised by something that I wasn't expecting. Oh, wow. Or fascination. Oh, wow. What's that? And so every time I can feel it in my body when I'm experiencing one of these words, I guess. And I love it because, and I love what Alexandra did, because I realized that I could take any of my experiences and I could put them to any one of these words and they would all fit. So at the very end, after I had finished writing, I love clouds and I've gotten really into cloud watching. And I ended up writing that for every single word because they bring me joy, they bring me surprise, and I think they're absolutely beautiful and completely fascinating, and everything about it captures me. So I liked the evolution of thinking of them as separate experiences, but realizing that they're all quite related to each other.
Yeah. And I really like how you connected it to how it feels in your body. And Alexandra just wrote in the chat, inspired. That literally means inspire, taking in breath, and how that made you feel is a really good observation. So thank you for sharing with us. Would anyone else like to go who hasn't shared yet? We're just about out of time, but and I can also, if you'd like to stay another minute, I can finish the recording if you don't want to share on the recording.
I have
Karen?
I have one, and I'll just do this one really quick. But the word gobsmacked really hit me really hard, and I live in Colorado, and the first time Kenosha Pass, which is a big mountain pass road. So you're driving through all these little mountain towns and you're driving up this huge incline to the top of the pass. And just as you come around going down the pass, the whole world opens up to this huge, giant, expansive valley. It's just, and I'm sure everybody's heard of South Park because that's what it is. It's South Park it's the area from which that show came from. But it was just the most breathtaking view after being surrounded by all these mountains. And then you just open up and there's hardly any trees. It's just farmland and it just takes your breath away. And I've probably been over that pass 100 times and it does it to me every single time. So that's my quickie. The rest
Thank
of mine
you.
are all ocean related because I live in the mountains but grew up near the ocean and I miss it, especially now because I can't get there.
Mhm. All right, so just a couple things before we finish up for everyone who's still here. So we ran out of time, but some discussion questions you might want to think about after you leave here might be, how can you be more open to experiencing a sense of wonder? Who can you share these discoveries with after the workshop? So we shared some with each other, but how can you keep this going by sharing it with somebody else in your life? And how can you help them to feel a sense of wonder maybe too? Along with that, does your sense of wonder end when you're not nature journaling? Or how can you keep that going? And so next week, I'll be here again. I hope that I'll see some of you again. I was thinking we could take a look at the February chapter from a Sand County Almanac by Alda Leopold, the passage called Good Oak. And I thought it was interesting because of the ideas he has in there about the land ethic. And I was also thinking about how writing can be kind of like a sense of time travel and how we're not just looking about what's right in front of us, but we can think about things happening over different times. And if you haven't read it, that might make more sense next time. So thank you all for being here. I hope that you had fun and I hope we'll see you next time. I know that these have been kind of hard times for a lot of people lately, myself included. And I think one thing by nature journaling and by focusing on, like, yes, we can use them to learn and to be scientists, but first and foremost, to have a sense of wonder and that sense of connection to nature can just be a little thing that can really help us to get through tough times, and that we're all here for each other too. So
Thank you. I noticed that you recorded these? Is there a way we can watch? Because I missed last week. I didn't know about it. I just sort of came across this on Facebook and I just found it was wonderful. So
thank you. Yes, I recorded last week's. I'm recording this one too. So
how would we watch it?
So I'm trying to put them on YouTube. I tried to upload the first one after last week, but there was like an error and the file was too big. But I know that lots of people have 1 hour videos on YouTube. So
Oh yeah,
I'm just
or
trying to
more.
figure out how to get that to work. And as soon as I get it up there, I will share that in the Nature Journal page, and I'll put it wherever I can where I think people will be able to find it. So that will be coming as soon as I can get that figured out.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you all.
Bye, Rebecca.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.